Good morning. Welcome. Just dealing with a few last minute technical difficulties, but we made it. We're only 2 minutes late. Thanks for hanging in there. My name's Heidi Flagg, part of the PDQ and Smart Deploy marketing team. Super happy to have you today. As you all know, Glenn is our fantastic and wonderful Smart Deploy support manager. I think you all know him by now, Glenn Bristol. Thanks for being here today to do a nice demo and Q&A.
Oh, thank you, Heidi. Happy to be here.
Yeah, wonderful. So today we'll be talking specifically about answer files. So creating zero-touch answer files, light touch. Glenn will walk us through the scenarios for when these are useful and how to create them, and some importance around including the Smart Deploy agent in those or the client in those. We've also left plenty of time for Q&A. Feel free to use the questions box within GoToWebinar here, and I will help field those and get those answered after Glenn's demo. And of course, we're recording, so we'll be sure to send out a link to the recording probably next week. I know it's a holiday weekend also, so it's coming. It'll probably be next week. And with that, I think we are ready to get things rolling. So I will pass it over to you, Glenn.
So today we're going to be covering how to create a zero-touch answer file, which is potentially a bit. It's an interesting title to give this because a zero-touch answer file is in fact the default type of answer file that is created. So let's step back a moment and talk about what an answer file actually is and does. So an answer file is intended to be a set of instructions for Deploy Wizard to use. Now, Deploy Wizard is this right here. When you are in Windows PE, this is the Smart Deploy Windows PE environment, which I have here on a VM. If you launch, if you are not using an answer file, or if you were using an attended answer file, this is what you will see when you boot up the VM. You will see a Smart Deploy splash screen with several options on it, including launching Deploy Wizard, which is the Deploy an Image button here. You will not routinely see Capture an Image on here. The only reason why you're seeing that on this particular environment is because it's a virtual machine, and capturing an image from within Windows PE is one possible option here. It's called a warm capture. You can read all about it in our KB, but we're not going to be covering that here today. So if you click Deploy an Image, and you've included an answer file that is attended, that is to say, a set of instructions for Deploy Wizard to follow, but it is not going to click through this wizard for you. That is what you will find when you launch the wizard. You will find, we'll give it here a moment here to load. You will find that it has all of its options filled in already. It's already got it's already selected a local network or off. And don't worry, I will go through this slower in a moment here. The important bits are it's going to include a set of credentials that you included when you created the answer file, and it's going to include a path for where the image is located and to select the image. Now I'm going to cancel out of this for now. Now those are two important details because those are steps that Smart PE is capable of taking on its own if you give it the right instructions to do that. You do not have to manually map a network drive to location of the image, and you don't have to manually enter credentials every time unless you want to. Unless for your scenario it makes sense to do it every time. We've met a few folks who are extremely concerned about security who don't even want to save encrypted credentials in their answer files, and that is fine. If you want to punch in credentials every time, then this is not the webinar for you. But if you want to have them encrypted in the answer file so that you don't have to punch them in every time, that is exactly what we're going to cover here today. Now, if this had been an unattended answer file, unattended means you don't have to put hands on this at all. What you would have seen when you booted into this VM, when you booted into Smart PE, is an unattended countdown. And the unattended countdown is 30 seconds by default. And during that 30 seconds, you can click cancel. So there is still a chance for the user who is in front of this machine, if there is a user in front of this machine, to stop the deployment if you've made a mistake. But if the user doesn't do anything, the deployment will proceed. It will launch Deploy Wizard. It's not going to show you any of the options that I just showed you. It's simply going to proceed with all of those options filled in already. So let's go create an answer file. So here in the Smart Deploy console, we have the activities view. I will switch out of advanced mode here, just so you can see what you would ordinarily see by default here. Everything is broken down into categories. Answer file wizard is under reimage devices. Now, you can see here, you can click on create an answer file. Now, advanced mode simply removes the categorization. So all of these same categories all of these same options are here. They are simply no longer categorized by task. So you can have this in whatever view you want. It's going to launch the same wizard either way. You might also notice that under use cloud services, there is in fact another link to create cloud answer file. This link will actually launch exactly the same answer file wizard, and it does not matter which one you use. The only difference is it's going to pre-select that one radio button at the beginning to tell you that you are using a cloud-based image rather than a local image, or an image that is on your local network or on your SmartDeploy console, accessible through a local UNC path. So I'm going to go ahead and click on create an answer file. Give that a moment to launch here. Lose my RDP window. There we go. All right. So just going to minimize some things here so that we are not confused about what context we are in. This is running on my SmartDeploy console host. And we are going to go ahead and take a look at the advanced options here. So in Answer File Wizard, the very first thing you can see here in advanced is that by default, all answer files are unattended, as I mentioned at the beginning. And that is, and what that means essentially is that if you create an answer file and you don't ever look at the advanced options, it will be an unattended answer file. We find that is useful for a lot of scenarios. We find that what we found in our usability testing is that most people creating an answer file do not want to do an attended answer file. They don't want to make any changes per deployment. They simply want the deployment to proceed as instructed. However, if for any reason you want to have an attended answer file, and being able to make changes per deployment is the most common reason for that, you can click on attended here. And what you will get if you click on attended is the option to skip pages that you don't want to do anything with. So even though you're using an attended answer file and all these things are going to be filled in already, you can click skip this page and you won't see this welcome page because, why have one extra click when you don't need one? So we'll click next. We'll go ahead and skip this page as well because we're not going to change what type of image we're going to be deploying here. So we'll go ahead and stick with local network. Click next. Now here's where we're going to put in credentials. Now I'm not actually going to save this answer file, so I'm going to put in some gibberish for this. Blah, blah, blah. And now, an important thing to remember here is whatever set of network credentials you enter on this page, Answer File Wizard will actually check to see if it works for the UNC path that you entered. It will try to access that image file, and if it's not able to, it will throw a warning at the end of this. If you see that warning, pay attention to it, because it means you've entered gibberish just like I did here. You needed to re-enter your credentials and go back. We'll go ahead and skip this page because these credentials will be pre-filled in our answer file, but we're not going to be changing them per deployment. So we'll go ahead and click next. Now here's where you're going to select an image. Now I'm going to go ahead and select one of my local images here. This is just in my SmartDeploy directory. That's on this particular machine. It's eDrive SmartDeploy. By default, it's going to be C Drive SmartDeploy, and I've got 2 Windows 10 images here. Click on that. Now you'll note that it's going to fill in the path for that image as a UNC path. The reason for that is how the SmartPE environment is actually going to access the image. Not only is it entering as a UNC path, it is entering it as an administrative share path. That is, at this time, how deployments work by default. Now, if you wanted to put your image into a standard share, that's to say one that does not use this $$ or $C$ framework, basically, an administrative share is built into Windows and allows any administrative user of that computer to access any hard drive on that machine by specifying it using the drive letter followed by $. It is these shares exist unless they are disabled. There are a number of ways in which they can be disabled by default. So essentially, it is a higher security environment to access. It requires a higher security user account to access this path than it would to access a standard share path. A standard share path is fully configurable. You can set whatever permissions you want on it. I say at this time because there are going to be some changes in this arena going forward for console-initiated operations. I'm not going to talk about those in detail later unless somebody's curious during the Q&A. However, in Answer File Wizard right here, if you had created a standard share, and let's just say it was called SmartDeploy. Oh. Assuming I've not just lost connectivity with my lab machine here. 1 second. So if you were to enter a different path here, such as, here we go, that did it. Such as the name of the machine, Wax SmartDeploy, and you have created a share for the SmartDeploy directory that is actually called SmartDeploy, and that standard share would be created here by clicking on properties and sharing. You can click the share button and then create a share that has this name here. I'm not going to do that for you right now, but that would be an option as well. Go ahead and click. Now, since that is not actually a valid path here, I'm going to go ahead and restore that to the way that it was. We'll click next. Oh, also, right here is one common area in which somebody might use an attended answer file. If they have, let's say you have multiple images and you have one image that you use most of the time, but you have another image that you might use only some of the time for specific use cases, specific roles, specific departments, an image that has been customized in some way that you're going to use that some of the time and you only want to create one set of smart to play media for it. For that scenario, what you can do here is don't skip this page, and then you would have the option to click browse and select a different image if you wanted to. The WIM file format actually has the capability of containing multiple images. You can capture multiple images to the same WIM file, and if you were to do that, they would appear in this drop-down right here where it says image name. So if you have multiple images inside the same WIM, you can leave this page unskipped, so you would leave this checkbox unchecked, and you would then have the option to select a different image. Putting multiple images in the same WIM file can be helpful for this specific scenario, but it also can create some headaches when it comes time to update those images. If your goal is to simply swap out and replace a single image, you have to engage in some command line operations to remove the previous image and capture the new one in there. So a lot of folks find it's not worth the trouble. We generally included it back when the product first got started because the WIM file format allows for a technology called single instance storage, which means you're only going to store one copy of any binary identical files that exist inside that WIM, and that includes if you're capturing multiple images in the same WIM. So capturing two different Windows 10 machines, there would be significant overlap in terms of what files are included in those two different operating systems. So putting two images inside of the same WIM would save you a bit of disk space. The trade-off there is each endpoint is going to download that entire WIM file and then only use whichever image it is actually using it. The result of that is you're going to increase the amount of bandwidth that you're using. So there are trade-offs either way, and then of course there's the additional overhead when you go to update that image. So that is certainly up to you. What I found in our experience is that most people will simply use separate WIM files, one WIM file per image, but the format does support either option. Go ahead and click next, and we'll go ahead and leave that unskipped so the user has the option to select a different image if they want to. Platform pack location. Now this right here is an environmental variable that exists in this path. By default, image folder is the folder where the image is located. Now we've added some additional intelligence to this over the years. It used to literally mean that it had to be the folder where the image was stored. So in that folder right here, that's eDrive Smart to Play images. And as you can see, there are no platform packs in this folder. Platform packs are PPK files. They are specific to a particular model, manufacturer, and operating system. However, the additional intelligence that we put in for this is if you are using the Smart to Play directory, that is your C Drive Smart to Play, or in this case, eDrive Smart to Play. If you're using this default directory structure here, where each folder corresponds to one of the console libraries, it will automatically map its network drive to this top-level directory, which is eDrive Smart to Play. And it will automatically look up and over one directory to the Platform Packs folder, which on this particular machine, I've not downloaded any Platform Packs yet because it's only deploying to virtual machines. However, if you had any Platform Packs downloaded, they would exist here. And let's go ahead and download one just so you can see that. We'll download this lovely Acer Aspire here. It's been downloaded for this exact purpose so many times. That is why. Okay. So we're not going to do that today because there's an ongoing networking issue there to sort out. Apologies for that. But in any case, on your Smart to Play console, you will find that there are platform packs in this location, which correspond to all of the devices that you deploy to routinely. In fact, I can show you that on my desktop machine here. So we'll go into C Drive Smart to Play on that machine. This one's a bit messier. Apologies for that. But you can see here in the Smart to Play directory, we've got many platform packs here corresponding to different devices that I have tested on. So that image folder directory, most of the time you are not going to need to modify it at all. But if you have your image stored anywhere else besides in the Smart to Play directory, which you can certainly do, you would want to specify the actual folder where the platform packs are stored. So we're going to go ahead and skip this because under most circumstances you would have no reason to specify multiple platform pack folders or select a different one per deployment. Platform packs they have metadata included in them, so they will only be used if there is an exact match for the manufacturer and model of the target machine, as well as the operating system of the device that you're trying to deploy. So putting all of your platform packs in a single folder and referencing that folder is exactly what you should be doing here. So we'll skip that page and click next. Now here's where you have the option to install application packs, and as you can see, I've got quite a few of those available here. So if I wanted to install one, I could put them in here in whatever order I want. We'll put Slack and Teams on there because some organizations use multiple IM clients. We are one of them, and we'll put Chrome on there as well. Make sure the latest version is on there. This particular application pack actually reaches out and downloads the latest version of Chrome because Google has helpfully made a single consistent URL available for the latest version of Chrome, which allows us to do that. With the automation in the application pack. Now, if you are including application packs, you can skip this page or not. If you think there's going to be any variation in software load between machines and you want to be able to customize it per machine, you can go ahead and leave this page unskipped. In order to install application packs, you need to install the Smart2Play client. The Smart2Play client does the work of installing application packs. It will, during the deployment process, because you're including these as a part of your reimaging operation, these application packs will automatically download to a temporary directory, that's C Windows Temp SD, on the target device. It will write some information into the registry to let the Smart2Play client know, yes, we did intend to stage these specific packs here, and then it will go ahead and install them as soon as the Smart2Play client is up and running running as a system service on that machine. It will go ahead and proceed to install these application packs after the OS is completely installed. So if you include application packs, you have to include the Smart2Play client as a part of your deployment. That, of course, gives you the option to manage those endpoints in the Smart2Play console in the computer management view. Give that a moment here. So over here in the computer management view, you can see I have the Smart2Play client installed on these machines here, and that gives you certain options within the console, including deploying application packs, including console-initiated deployment, updating drivers, capturing or deploying a user state, joining to a domain, renaming the computer, or engaging in patch management operations. Or updating the existing client. You also have the software management and patch management views, which are enabled as part of the Smart2Play client install for anybody with a pro subscription level. So here is where you can specify a naming convention. Now, I want to be very clear here. This is a set of rules for how computers will be named if you use this media with them. It is not a single name. If your goal is to give it a specific name, like My Cool PC, this is not the place to enter that. What you would enter here instead is a naming convention, which by default is going to be just the letter A followed by 8 random digits. Pseudo-random, as we know from computer science, because true randomness is not something computers are good at. However, naming conventions exist as a prioritization of different methods. So by default, this list will attempt to create a computer name in whatever order you specify here. So first, it's going to try to use the existing computer name. Now, the existing computer name may or may not exist on that machine. If you're deploying to a bare metal machine that has no operating system installed on the hard drive, it's not going to have a computer name. Likewise, if you're deploying to a machine that has an encrypted hard drive, then the SmartPE will be unable to retrieve the current computer name. So if this returns a null value or an invalid value, it's going to move on to the next option, which is read from WMI property. Now, we've included a default WMI query right here, and you can go ahead and add a prefix to this if you want. Like lab dash is a common one. And this one here is select SMBIOS asset tag from Win32 system enclosure. The SMBIOS asset tag field is not the serial number, just to dispel a common misconception here. The serial number is set by the manufacturer, and it's in a very hard to remember field name called serial number. So if you want to use that instead, you can use that. SMBIOS asset tag is a user-definable field that exists in the system firmware on many machines. It is blank by default. So if you include the default WMI query here of SMBIOS asset tag, that will be an invalid WMI query unless you have set that name in the system firmware. However, if you want to give a machine a single consistent name that will follow it through its entire life cycle at your organization, then SMBIOS asset tag can be a good option for that. We find many school districts like to do this. Any organization where you've got hardware that might be moving around or serving many different purposes over the course of its lifespan, but you want to always be able to keep track of that one reliable internal tracking alias for it, SMBIOS asset tag can be the way to go for that. And then finally, because these two can fail, you're going to fail over at last to generate custom name, because generate custom name never fails, because it can always generate a custom name. It will be that number or that letter A followed by 8 random digits. You can of course change this prefix to anything you want, like lab if you're so inclined, or B or C, and so on. You can reorder these in any way you want. So if you know you're not going to bother or reading from a WMI property and you always want to use a custom name, you can go ahead and move that to the top of the list. It will do that first. That will always work, and it will never use the other options here. Now, you may be asking yourself right now, well, what about that scenario where I just want my technician to be able to put in a single specific computer name here? I don't want to mess with the system firmware. I just want to, they've got a spreadsheet, they've got to name them sequentially, they've got some sort of setup that is not precisely addressed by this naming convention page. So what you do in that case is you're going to leave this naming convention page as is, because it doesn't matter what you set here, because you're going to change it anyway. And instead, we'll go ahead and skip this page here. What you will do is, I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead here slightly so I can show you the page that it's on. It's this page right here, which is the network. Sorry, I skipped right past it. So 3 pages past naming convention. So 1, 2, 3. Here we are on the network identification page. Now, this is where you join the computer to the domain if you want to, or by default, it's going to stay in a work group. That's to say it's not going to join a domain. Or there's a third option here for joining an Azure domain, which will prompt the user to sign in and join to an Azure domain upon startup of the operating system. Now, this is in fact the page where you will want to leave this page unskipped, so leave this checkbox unchecked, because this is the page where a text box will appear in Deploy Wizard, which will allow you to change the computer name. In fact, I can show that to you right now. Go ahead and click Deploy an image here. Now, you'll recall this Windows PE environment is currently using Smart Deploy Media that does have an attended answer file, so I can skip ahead and show you what this looks like. It's going to show me every page because I didn't skip any of these. It's going to warn me that there aren't any compatible platform packs because, as you saw, there aren't any in that folder. That is fine. I'm going to ignore the naming convention page and click 1, 2, 3. And as you can see, there's an extra text box here. You can see that it filled in the computer name, and this is the computer name that will actually be used for this specific deployment. It filled it in using the naming convention that I specified, which was generate a custom computer name. And it was the letter A followed by 8 random digits. So if at this point I want to rename this to something else like Glenn's Cool PC, I can do that. And this machine will get that specific name for this specific deployment. So if this is a scenario you want to address in your environment, if you want your technicians to be able to put in a single specific and arbitrary name per deployment, then this is the page you will want to leave open. That is network identification. So going back to the network identification page here, you can see that text field does not appear here because it wouldn't make sense in Answer File Wizard, because a single specific computer name doesn't make sense when you're creating rules for all of your machines. So let's go back here. So we were back on the naming convention page here. We'll skip that page, click Next. Here is where you can enable user data migration. Now, this is built-in integration with the Microsoft User State Migration Tool, or USMT. That is a component of the Windows ADK. Essentially, it is a deployment tool that is intended to back up the state of any existing user accounts on a target PC. And it also has the capability of restoring that information to a different PC. It is intended for migration scenarios where you are moving somebody off of one machine and restoring all of their data and their user settings and preferences to a different machine. USMT, just to warn you, is a Microsoft tool, and it is a bit of a black box. It has logs, it has error codes. If you run into any problems on a particular machine, we will certainly try to help you troubleshoot that. But if it fails, it is one of those tools that works really well about 95% of the time. And if it fails, there is often not much to be done except simply backing up data manually and moving it from one machine to the other, which I would encourage you to let your users know, hey, this is a good fallback anyway. Go ahead and back up your user data before we re-image your machine. Now, this setup right here, if you're including user data migration in your answer file, what you are doing here is backing up user data from this one machine and restoring it back to that same machine. So this is in fact not for a migration scenario at all, as it exists here in the answer file wizard. It is in fact for a refresh scenario. If you want to re-image that PC but keep all the user data intact, it will go ahead and back it up to whatever location you specified. Now, by default, it's going to back it up to a network share, which you can do here. You can back it up to, there's a user states folder here that gets created by default. And it will go ahead and punch that in as a UNC path, same as before. it'll create a subfolder that is specific to the particular machine you're backing up, and that .mig file, which is generated by USMT, will be created in that location. The importance of the advantage of using a network share is that even if the device were to suffer a sudden power loss or hardware failure, or if anything else were to go wrong with deployment and cause the deployment to fail, you have still backed up their user data at some external location. So you've still got that .mig file. There's in fact a built-in utility in USMT called USMT utils. You can use that to extract the contents of a MIG file. So even if that is the only backup that you have of that user's data, which again I would not recommend, you need to let your users know, hey, back up your stuff before we do anything to your machine. But you've got that .mig file, and you can potentially retrieve user data from there. You also have the option to store files locally. Now, what locally means here is on the hard drive of the machine that you're about to reimage. So by default, Smart Deploy will use a disk option called Recreate Drives, which I'll show you here in a moment. I'm actually going to uncheck this so I can show you what that is. Actually, that is back in Advanced Options, I believe. So we'll go back into that, click Advanced, Disk Options. So default is that we will do Recreate Drives, which is that we will wipe. That is to say, we run a diskpart clean command, which is going to wipe all data on the target device, including all of your users' data, and it's going to wipe out all disk structure on the device as well, any partition information that exists there. It is then going to reformat that drive using whatever existed on the reference VM of the image that you are trying to deploy to that machine. In other words, it's going to wipe out everything that was there, and it's going to replace it with whatever was in your image. How this interacts with user data migration is that if you opt to, if you choose to back up the files locally, which is on the hard drive of the machine that you're about to reimage, they have to be backed up to a location on that PC that is going to survive the reimaging process, which means you cannot use Recreate Drives because that wipes the entire hard drive. You have to use the Wipe and Load Drives option instead. Now, the Wipe and Load Drives option by default will preserve a folder with whatever name is specified right here, and that is backup. Now, to be clear, backup refers to the folder C:\backup on the target PC. So if the user were to stash any files there, those files would also survive this process. If you were to back up user data locally, it's going to get backed up to this backup folder by default. So I'm going to go ahead and OK. Click Next, and we'll go back to that user data migration page here. And we'll select Store Files Locally, and we're going to go ahead and select that same folder backup for where we're going to back that up. That is going to be in C:\backup on that machine itself. It's going to create a .mig file in that location. Now, in this case, if the deployment were to suddenly and catastrophically fail, you would not have the .mig file to fall back on because it only exists on the target PC's hard drive. There is some fail-safe functionality built into this. Because when you are running user data migration, the scan state process, that is the portion that backs up user data from the target PC to that C drive backup folder, if it returns anything but a success code, then Deploy Wizard will automatically cancel the deployment. It will throw an error. It will say that there was a problem with user data migration, and it will not proceed with the deployment, which means it's not going to wipe the hard drive, it's not going to wipe the user data, and it's not going to proceed with reimaging. In other words, you would have another shot at it at that point to figure out to pull logs, to troubleshoot what went wrong with the USMT process, or to skip the USMT process entirely and just back up the user data manually. So if scan state fails, you will have the option to cancel the deployment, and the deployment will in fact not proceed on its own. And that is also true even if you are doing an unattended answer file, even if it's proceeding with deployment without any opportunity for your technician to cancel it or change options. If scan state fails, the deployment will halt. That relies on it failing in a way that is evident to Deploy Wizard. It has to throw an actual failure code. USMT is also fond of completing with errors. So it may generate a .mig file. There might also be problems using that .mig file. I'm not trying to discourage anyone here from using USMT. We are on the support side, so we have seen all the different ways in which it can go wrong, but we know that lots of people use it all the time, and they have never run into any of these problems, and it works just fine for them. So it is a fine tool, and that is why we built integration with it into the product. I would just encourage you to exercise caution and test it in your environment, test it with your actual users and your actual user data, safely backed up to another location first, and just make sure that it routinely works well in your environment before using it. So we'll go ahead and leave that on the network share here. Click Next. Oh, I should also mention one more note about USMT real quick. So this scenario for refresh, where you are backing it up and backing it up from a single PC and restoring it back to that same PC, is the option for including this in Answer File Wizard. If, however, you want to back up user data from one machine and restore it to another, that is an option that is included with the Smart Deploy client. And as you can see here, I can select one machine, capture user data from it, and I can select a different machine and deploy user data from there. In either case, that's going to be backed up to a network location on my Smart Deploy console host right here. And that is how you would use USMT to migrate data from one machine to another, which we are not doing here today. So we'll click Next. I'm actually going to uncheck that here. Click Next. Now here's where you have an option to enter a Windows product key. This product key is not stored in plain text in the answer file. It is encrypted, just like any passwords that you enter. So you can safely enter this here, and it will then be passed through to the operating system, and Windows will attempt to activate itself against Microsoft's activation servers. This option and this page will only appear if you have selected an image where you did not already enter a Windows product key during Capture Wizard. This is one of two opportunities that you have to enter a Windows product key. You can enter it during Capture, in which case it gets written into the metadata of the WIM file itself, and then this page will simply not appear. If you don't do that, then you'll have the option to enter it here, and it will then be applied at deployment time. This can be useful if you are, in most cases with free imaging, you're going to want to look into getting a volume license and use the same multiple activation key each time. If you've got a KMS server in your environment, you may or may not need to specify a key at all. These fields are optional. You can leave both of them blank if it does not fit with your scenario. Smart Deploy doesn't have any control over whether a particular product key is going to activate a machine or not. That is entirely a Microsoft process. We are simply giving you two different options to pass through that information to the Windows OS. Click Next. You've seen this page already, but this is the network identification page. It's where you can opt to join a domain if you wish. Now, if you're entering the domain information, you would enter it in fully qualified domain name format. So that might not be the short domain name here because we are pdq.com. I'll go ahead and put in pdq.com, which is our RFQDN. If you want to enter an OU or an organizational unit, you have to enter that in distinguished name format, and that is something that you could find in Active Directory on the domain controller. So if you're having any issues finding the distinguished name for the OU that you want to include, reach out to support. We can definitely point you in the right direction for that. It's going to look something like OU equals, and then each component of it, comma, and then a few other. It's hard to describe what it looks like, but basically it's a long string of text that represents every component of the OU. The organizational unit is optional. You do not have to include one at all. And the domain join process is not capable of moving a machine from one OU to another. So if this machine already existed in AD under a different OU, you're going to want to leave this blank. It's going to rejoin it to that exact same OU again. If you don't specify anything here and this machine has never been domain joined before, it's going to go in whatever the default OU or container in your environment is, which is the computer's container in most environments. Now, if you enter a domain here, it's going to prompt you to enter domain join credentials. Same format that you would enter network credentials in. It's going to be domain /username, but I'm not actually going to do that here. Any credentials that you enter there will be encrypted and put into the answer file as well. Go ahead and skip that page since we will always be doing that. Here's where you can set your region and language settings. We'll skip that page, which means it will always pick Pacific time in English. Now here's where you can install the Smart Deploy client. Now, you in fact have to install the Smart Deploy client if you have selected any application pack. So I'm going to click Next and go past here, and it's going to throw a warning. It's going to say application packs have been selected for deployment. The Smart Deploy client service is required for application deployment because it in fact installs application packs. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now, by default, it's going to fill in the host name of my console host here, which is GlenLab, and port 8080. You can leave that as is. The cloud-only connection box has to do with the behavior of the Smart Deploy client and its capability to talk to the Smart Deploy console over any internet connection. Quick primer on the Smart Deploy client here. When you fire up the Smart Deploy client on an endpoint, the first thing it's going to try to do is reach out to the Smart Deploy console host over this API service URI. That is only going to be accessible within your local network. So if this machine is on your same network, it will be able to reach out to GlenLab:8080. It's reaching out to port 8080 on this machine over the local network. If it is not on your local network, then it will fail to reach this API service URI. It will keep trying for 5 minutes, And after 5 minutes, it will fail over to talking to api.smartdeploy.com, which is our online API service, which will allow your console to communicate with it remotely, and also you can initiate cloud-based operations if you have a subscription tier, which includes cloud deployments. If you want your machine to skip that initial attempt to connect locally, in other words, if you know this is a machine that exists, it's at an employee's house, it's never going to be on our corporate network, or maybe it's going to be on our corporate network some of the time because this employee is VPN'd in some of the time, and I don't want it flickering back and forth between local and cloud because I'm only ever going to do cloud deployments to this machine. If that is the case, you can have it skip that initial attempt to connect locally, and you can select cloud only. I'll tell you one common question we get here is, well, how do I force it to have a local connection? The answer is you can't force it to have a local connection. A local connection will be available to it if you leave this checkbox unchecked. So by default, it will attempt to reach out over that local API service URI. If it is showing up in your Smart Deploy console host as with a cloud connection type, what that means is that it attempted to connect on this API service URI and it was unable to do so. And if that is the case, there is a connectivity problem between the client and the console that needs to be troubleshooted further. So there's no way to force it to have a local connection, but you can figure out what is blocking it, figure out what is preventing it, figure out if there's a routing issue. You may need to loop in your network administrator to figure out if it's on a separate VLAN, figure out if traffic is not being allowed through on port 8080. There are lots of different ways in which network environments can prevent this local connection from happening. So if you have a machine that you expect should be a local connection because it is on the same corporate network and it's showing up as cloud, that indicates a connectivity problem you need to address. And again, feel free to reach out to support on that. We will definitely help out any way we can, but you will definitely also want to reach out to your own network engineering team and let them know, hey, I'm expecting to be able to reach this machine on port 8080 and I'm not able to. What gives? And hopefully they can give you an answer on that. So we'll go ahead and install the Smart Deploy client. We will always install the Smart Deploy client, so we'll check the box to skip this page, click Next. Optional answer file description. Now, this is because as of 2 versions ago, we included the option to include multiple answer files inside of the same media for certain Smart Deploy media types. So if you want to include a short description of this answer file, let's see here, so that we can easily identify which one it is. Let's say Windows 10 standard image. Then that is what this answer file will display if you attempt to use it and some other answer file as part of the same media. What you would then see when you boot to Smart Deploy Media on a target device is a drop-down, and you would simply select the correct answer file for that machine. You can do this in lieu of having separate Smart Deploy Media. If you want to use the same media type but select a different answer file for each one, that is an option here. So go ahead and click Next. We'll skip that page. That was not going to show up in Deploy Wizard anyway. Click Next, Next, and Finish. We'll go ahead and save this as attended tests. Now, this will throw a warning because of the gibberish credentials that I entered there. Give it a second. It is making that check right now. And it is about to throw me a warning here saying, hey, what gives? I can't map that network drive using the credentials you gave me. Do you want to try entering different ones? Now I'm going to say no because I'm not actually trying to create a working answer file here, but this is where you would want to say yes and go back and fix your credentials. If for any reason you are creating an answer file that points to an image path that is not accessible from this console host, which does happen sometimes, people create dedicated deployment networks, which might be on a completely separate physical network from their standard one. If for whatever reason you are not able to access that image path directly from the console host, you will still be able to put that path in, and you will still be able to put those credentials in. It will simply throw a warning. You can click no to not revise those credentials, and you'll still be able to create the answer file either way. Now, once you create an answer file, all you have created is a local copy of that answer file on the Smart Deploy server. It is not going to be used for anything by default. You can see here, there is the one that we just created. The mere existence of this answer file on this server is not going to tell any machine to use it. You have to actually create Smart Deploy Media using that answer file before it will be used. And I'm not going to go through the entirety of Media Wizard here, but I will show you what that looks like. We'll click Create Media. Actually, I will, but it'll be a speed run. We're going to create boot media here. Now, actually, this is a good place to stop here. So when you are creating Smart Deploy Media, what you are creating is something bootable that can get you into this the Smart Deploy Windows PE environment. That's this Windows PE environment right here. What we have here is literally just an ISO file. In fact, I'll show you that here. it's an ISO file that is attached to this particular VM. So it's functioning just as if you had put a DVD into its physical DVD drive. Only instead we are using an ISO file instead. That is an option you can use when creating boot media or offline deployment media. To create a bootable USB or DVD. Now, for any of these first three options, boot media, offline deployment media, which is going to include your image and platform packs as a part of the media itself, or WDS boot media, which is for use with Windows deployment services. If you want to set up WDS with Pixie Boot in your environment and deliver your boot image over the network, you do have that option. Check out our KB if you want a set of instructions on how to do that. For all three of these options, you can use attended or unattended answer files. That's to say, you can boot into Windows P and have it proceed on its own. That's an unattended answer file. Or you can boot into Windows P and have to click through Deploy Wizard to be able to make changes per deployment. You can do that with all three of these first three options. The fourth option is a deployment package. A deployment package is designed for use in the Smart Deploy computer management view for console-initiated deployment. Now, for console-initiated deployment, you are not going to have hands on that machine. You're initiating it from the console. That machine might be in a different building from you. It might be at a completely different facility from you, or might be at an employee's home if you're doing a cloud deployment. So you will not be there to click through Deploy Wizard, which means that if you select that answer file, and which we just created, which is an attended answer file, it will automatically be marked as unattended. So if you create an attended answer file with or without skipping any pages, it will automatically be changed to unattended if you select deployment package. The skip values will not be reflected. It simply won't display Deploy Wizard at all. But if you pick any of these other options here, then it will respect whatever you selected. It will respect attended, partially attended, which is what we call that mode where you're skipping pages, or unattended. Quick check on time there. Okay, I'm going to wrap up here because we want to have time for Q&A. So, show you real quick where you select the answer file here. So on the answer files page, here is where you would select the answer file. By default, it's going to show you the contents of your Smart Deploy directories answer files folder. And here's where you can check one or more answer files. And here's where we would check the one that we just created and click next. There's some additional automation around this in Media Wizard, which you may see when you're clicking through it. If you're creating offline deployment media, it'll prompt you to automatically update the answer file to use the copy of the image that it's going to split up and copy over to your USB stick. Just click yes when that happens. Read the messages when they pop up. If you have any questions about what any of them mean, feel free to reach out to support or check out our documentation. So that is a quick primer on Answer File Wizard, and that is all I had prepared for today. So if anybody has any questions, we will go ahead and get to the Q&A.
Glenn, that was fantastic. That was a lot of information. I hope everyone was paying close attention, because if my mind wandered even for a second, I was lost. So thank you so much for that walkthrough, Glenn. Before we jump into Q&A, we do have a bunch of questions. We'll definitely do that. I just wanted to make a call out. So this Smart Deploy customer series, this Deploy Smarter series, was, a bit of an experiment. This first round is a 4-event series, and we wanted to see if this was helpful for customers. And based on the registration numbers and the feedback we've received, this has been really helpful. Our whole goal was to make sure that customers had awareness and training into some of the more advanced configurations with Smart Deploy beyond just the core imaging capabilities, and ultimately just so that you can get the most out of your subscription. So because this has gone well, we will probably continue this in some form. We'll take a break from it, but we really want to hear from you about what topics you'd like us to cover in future sessions. What places do you have questions about how to use Smart Deploy? So when you leave the event today, you should be prompted with a survey to let us know, how helpful this information was, but also a request for ideas about future topics to cover. So please be sure to fill that out. That'll really help us to make sure that we're tailoring these topics to our customers. Another quick call out, the fourth event in this 4-event series is a little bit different one. So I've been with Smart Deploy for 11 years. It's been a long time. I've been in many, many, many customer webcast events, and almost every one we get a question: can Smart Deploy manage Mac or Apple devices? And the answer has always been no. But exciting news is that we are now, as part of PDQ, we have a kind of sister product called Simple MDM, which is a fantastic tool for managing your Mac and Apple devices. and we will be doing a tour of that. We'll have Zach joining us next month in July to give you a quick tour on Simple MDM and how you can manage, in addition to managing your Windows devices with Smart Deploy, you can easily manage your Mac and Apple devices with Simple MDM. So I'll post the registration link for that in the chat here while we jump into Q&A with Glenn, but excited to finally have a yes answer for that for our customers who have been asking for this for so long. So we'll be super interested to hear your feedback. And of course, we'll have a nice promo available for everyone who joins that event. So be sure to register if you have any Mac devices that you are managing. With that, I'm going to jump into some of these Q&A questions for you, Glenn. I think you can see these on your side too. So
I can indeed.
Okay, great. So if you have a place you want to start, that's fine. Otherwise, I'll just kind of start at the top here. Larry had a question about if you skip a screen, does that skip all of the settings on that page, or does it just hide the screen for a user?
So if you skip a page when you were creating an attended answer file, you have the right idea here. That is going to hide that page when Deploy Wizard is displayed on the target device. It is not going to skip the settings on that page. The settings on that page will essentially be treated as if that one page is unattended, which makes sense if you think about it, because if the page you're skipping is selecting an image, well, the deployment can't proceed if you haven't selected an image. So it is going to use those settings regardless. But if you skip that page, what will happen on the target device is the user will not be able to change to a different image or change any of the other settings on that page. It will simply proceed with the settings on that one page as you've entered them. And that is true of any pages that you skip.
Great. Thanks, Glenn. John wants to know, this was early on in your demo here, but he wanted to know, where did you get the .ppk? I've only seen Dell cab files for a given machine model.
Yeah, so the .ppk files, the platform packs, are actually created by Smart Deploy, and they're available for download in your Smart Deploy packet, or in your Smart Deploy console as a part of the platform packs library. If you click on, you saw I had a connection problem when I tried doing this earlier. This is unfortunately ongoing with my lab machine. It has nothing to do with the console at all. But if you click on the platform packs view and click on the plus sign in the upper right corner and download a platform pack, you can see the entire platform pack library, and you can search for whatever model you want. So if you're talking about a Dell Optiplex, you can see all of our different Dell Optiplex options here. You can click on one and click download, and it will go ahead and save it locally to your machine. Each platform pack file is specific to a particular manufacturer, model, and operating system. One quick note on operating system. You may notice there aren't that many Windows 11 packs available yet because it's a fairly new operating system. There haven't been a ton of requests for them. Windows 10 packs by default will work with Windows 11. If Smart Deploy detects both a Windows 10 and a Windows 11 pack available for the device that you're deploying to, and you're deploying a Windows 11 image to it, it will go ahead and preferentially it will choose the Windows 11 pack. But if there is not one available, it will go ahead and look for a Windows 10 pack and try using that instead. All right, what is next?
Yeah, so Larry has a question. Can we upload to OneDrive or point to a OneDrive location for the packs and WIM file?
Absolutely. That is built into cloud deployment as one of the options here. So I only showed selecting a local image, but if you had selected cloud on that first screen and your console was currently signed into OneDrive, you would have the option to browse for your available images that have been uploaded to OneDrive, and any platform packs that you uploaded there would be available as well. In those cases, basically, something fairly similar to something basically identical to what is happening in the local level is happening. You are booting that device in some way to Smart Deploy Media, and it is proceeding from within that Windows PE environment to connect directly to OneDrive and pull those files down over the internet to that endpoint. If you have any questions about cloud deployment, we've got a bunch of articles about it in the on the support KB. That's support.smartdeploy.com, or feel free to reach out to support.
Great. Thanks, Glenn. Paul has a question. This one might be a little bit hard to follow, but I'll try to read it slowly here. So I used to be able to use image folder name / some folder name other than platform packs, for example, /ppks. This does not seem to work any longer. Is this because it's automatically and only looking for a subfolder called platform packs?
I'll be honest with you, Paul. As far as I know, subfolders never worked. I know that we've had some users have those in their environment before. I've only ever seen them work if they've specified that subfolder as their platform packs directory. Suffice to say, it's not intended functionality. We included some additional logic with that image folder variable to look up and over to that platform packs directory in the SmartDeploy directory. But if you want to include a different folder structure, the best thing to do is to just specify that folder directly instead of using that image folder variable. Just point directly to the folder where your packs are, and you should be all good.
Great. Now, Tim has a question, and I think this answer won't be perfectly clear, but is it better to build an image with all applications already installed or install application packs? So I could see how it would be better to use application packs since they would be more current, but wouldn't application packs add time to the deployment?
Well, Tim, you've correctly identified the trade-offs involved here. So I cannot say that either option is better. They do have trade-offs in the same way that you just described here. Now, you can include applications as a part of your image. In fact, most enterprise applications will install just fine as a part of your image. In fact, there are some applications, especially exceptionally large ones, like say bigger than about 5 gigs, where application packs are probably not the best option to include them. Including them as a part of your image means you are downloading that information and you are applying it to that machine every time, so you will consume that bandwidth. But if you are installing it as an application pack, you are not actually saving any bandwidth or disk space by doing it separately. What you are adding is granularity. You're adding the ability to apply an image and then apply a different set of application packs to, let's say, a role or a department. So yeah, it's entirely up to you. If you've got a reliable process for installing an application as an application pack, you could set it up to always push the latest version. You could make sure your application packs are up to date. But in the same way, your reference VM can be updated over and over again. You can install Windows updates on it. You can update all your applications, recapture that image, and then you're deploying an image that has up-to-date applications. So you can accomplish either goal using either method. It's just down to what makes the most sense for your scenario.
Great. Thanks, Glenn. Paul has another, I guess this is more a comment than a question, but I'll read through it just to make sure that it's not something we already do. It says, for machine naming, it would be nice to be able to use a script to define the machine name as well. For example, one that would pick the next unused name in AD, which matches a pattern.
That is possible, but not through the UI. So we had to, Paul, we had to basically decide how complex we wanted the naming convention screen to be. And what we included here was, just based on usability testing, a set of options that covers most scenarios that people were asking for. And we do occasionally get requests to be able to perform to pull from a central repository in some way, or to otherwise do something more advanced. We've had scripts that will pull the first 5 characters of a serial number, which can be good because Windows computer names can only be 15 characters long at the most, which means that if you happen to be including a machine that has a very long serial number, then simply specifying serial number will not work for it. So this would automatically truncate that to just 5 digits and then maybe apply a prefix to it. So the way that you would do that with Answer File Wizard is not within the UI itself, but let's go into Answer Files here. I'll go ahead and edit the one we just created. There it is. If you right-click Edit in the Answer Files view, it's actually going to relaunch that Answer File. It's going to relaunch that Answer File in Answer File Wizard. If you want to edit it using a text editor, you can do that, but you would have to go to the actual folder and right-click Edit or open it with Notepad here. And as you can see, an Answer File is just an XML file. So making manual edits is a possibility. Just proceed at your own risk, and if you break anything, just start over with the wizard. Now, if you wanted to do an advanced naming convention here, you would do that with the tasks view here. Now, tasks allow you to run command lines during any phase of deployment, and there are 2 of those phases that occur in Windows PE. There's before the image is applied and after the image is applied. So getting under the hood a little bit as to what actually happens when you enter a computer name in Answer File Wizard, whatever computer name is set by Answer File Wizard. In other words, what computer name will actually be used for that machine. During the deployment process, the image is applied, and then that specific computer name is written into a different answer file, the sysprep unattend.xml file, which is giving instructions to Windows sysprep for what to do with that machine, including what computer name to apply. So what you would do here, if you wanted to change the computer name to something more advanced, like pulling from a central repository or like modifying WMI query in some way, something that is not covered through the UI, you would specify a script here that would accomplish that. And what that script would essentially do is it would perform whatever operation that you require to pull that computer name information, and it would overwrite whatever we had written into the sysprepattern.xml with whatever you have specified in that script. So that is not a simple answer, and it's generally not too simple in practice to set up, but we have lots of people that are using it. So if that's something that you want to try and set up, the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure you've got a reliable script that pulls the information that you're looking for. And once you have that, we can guide you further into how to write that into the sysprep.xml automatically and how to apply that automatically using a task as a part of deployment. Unfortunately, we don't have time to show that in detail here today, but definitely reach out to support if that's something you're interested in doing.
Maybe a future event topic, perhaps, around custom naming. But one follow-on question that came in from Chris while you were describing that, when using Glenn's method for setting a custom computer name, will this custom name be used for the license in the Smart Deploy license management console on the web?
Yes, it will. By default, as of, I believe, 3.0.1030, which was 2 versions ago, or which was the previous version of Smart Deploy. If you have the Smart Deploy client installed on an endpoint, and if you change the computer name after you have deployed to that machine, it will go. The Smart Deploy client will go ahead and report that updated computer name into our licensing service, and it should appear in your license report with that computer name as well. Sorry. That does answer your question, correct? I'm not actually seeing that question here.
It came in while you were talking. So
okay,
unless
perfect.
You can talk and read at the same time, you wouldn't.
I cannot. So hopefully that answered it.
I wouldn't be surprised if you could, Glenn. I mean, you're like superhuman. So, okay, we have just a couple minutes, so I'll just get through a couple more questions. And if we don't get to your question, of course, you can always write in. You should be in touch with your, customer success manager. They can always help route you toward the right person who can get your questions answered. I do want to just also mention our knowledge base, support.smartdeploy.com. Glenn and his team are managing this and adding content all the time, adding content and updating content. So that's always a great place to start if you have a question. There's a lot of really great step-by-step processes and how-tos in those articles over on the knowledge base side of things. It's searchable. It works really well. I always, can find what I'm looking for pretty easy with the search functionality. So support.smartdeploy.com is a fantastic starting point when you have questions or you're wanting to dig in on some of these more advanced configurations. One last question here. If you want to manually specify a computer name and choose not to skip the network identification screen, can you still have the domain information pre-populated?
Yes. So any information that you put in on that page will appear in Deploy Wizard if you are displaying that page or not. So as I might have covered on a previous question here, if you skip a page, whatever you've put in on that page will still be used. Likewise, if you don't skip a page of Deploy Wizard, then whatever you put on that page will simply be pre-populated. So on that network identification page, if you have entered an FQDN and optionally an organizational unit to join the domain, those settings will still be specified. You will just have the option to change the computer name as well. You can change the computer name without messing with the domain settings at all.
Wonderful. All right, this gets us to time. I did post a link to the page that has the recordings of past events. In a few days, this recording will also be added to that, maybe today, maybe tomorrow. And also I posted a link to register for that Simple MDM tour that we'll be doing next month. And again, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for being a Smart Deploy customer. We love getting to show you all these advanced capabilities within Smart Deploy that maybe you weren't aware of or didn't quite know how to get stood up. So Glenn's always here. Obviously, he's a great resource and very knowledgeable. And we appreciate your time, Glenn. Thanks for doing this for us.
Thank you, Patty.
Yeah, have a wonderful day, everyone. Enjoy your weekend, and thanks for being a customer.
This has been Deploy Smarter with Glenn Bristol. Thank you for joining us here at Smart Deploy, powered by PDQ.com. You can sign in to Smart Deploy by going to smartdeploy.com/sign-in and view detailed license information. If you need support, you can go to support.smartdeploy.com, check out our knowledge base, or submit a support ticket.